Hey guys, I'm back to do another character review. This time my friend and I are reviewing, the characters of Anastasia Tremaine from the Cinderella franchise, and Beast, or as some people like to call him, Prince Adam from, the Beauty and the Beast franchise. He posted his Anastasia video yesterday, and I'm here today to do my Beast video. I've got a really long list of complaints about him. Some of them I can kind of agree with, but others, especially the ones towards the end, are pretty stupid. Excuse me. Anyway. He's just as much a villain as Gaston, since they both wanted Belle solely for their own benefits. Gaston wanting to marry her for her looks, and Beast wanting her to break the spell. He's ugly in his human form. He's scary in his beast form, especially when he's angry. He has no personality in his human form. He should have stayed a beast. He's angry, mean, cruel, and abusive. He's an ungrateful, spoiled brat. He becomes a wimp after he reforms. He's a bad role model. He let Belle go and ruined his servant's chance of becoming human again. He didn't care that an angry mob was attacking the castle, or that his servants could be hurt or die in the process. He likely sexually abused Belle, and he's actually Chip's father. Obviously, these aren't my opinion. They're somebody else's. That I've heard somewhere on the internet in various places. Obviously not my opinion. Anyway, starting with, he's just as much a villain as Gaston, since they both wanted Belle solely for their own benefits. Yes, originally he did want Belle just so that he could break the spell, which did sort of make him antagonistic, originally. But the difference between him and Gaston is that he reformed. Gaston didn't. And he's not the only Disney hero that Disney hero or heroine that starts off with a antagonistic attitude and then reforms in the end. I mean, if you look at Naveen from Princess and the Frog, he basically wanted Tiana so that she could break the spell that turned him into a frog, and when that didn't work, he basically wanted her to be his servant girl for a while, until he learned to love her. Now, I don't think that his development was done as well as Beast's was, but the point is, Beast isn't the only Disney hero or heroine that starts off with an antagonistic attitude. And then ends up reforming, and it's made pretty clear that that he's reformed and has learned to love Belle, otherwise the spell wouldn't have been broken. Because it said that in order for the spell to be broken and for them to turn human again, he had to learn to love another person and earn her love in return before the last petal of the rose fell. So, while he did start off being selfish and only wanting Belle for the purpose of breaking the spell wouldn't have been broken if he hadn't learned to love her for who she was. Which was not the case with Gaston. He pretty much only loved Belle for her beauty, being the most beautiful girl in town, which makes her the best, and don't I deserve the best, to quote him. And he never learned how to like her for herself. So, while yeah, they both did start off wanting Belle for selfish reasons, the main difference is, Beast reformed and learned to like Belle for herself, Gaston didn't. He's ugly in his human form. Okay. While he may not be the most handsome of the Disney princes in his human form, and he may not be traditionally handsome, I mean, liking a character, disliking a character, solely based on how attractive you find them is really weak and shallow. I'm sorry, but it is. I mean, I find Quasimodo to be ugly, but he's still one of my favorite animated heroes. So, and I mean, even characters that I dislike, that I don't find attractive, like, Dimitri from Anastasia, and, Flynn Rider from Tangled. I hate both of them, and I don't find either of them to be very attractive, but I'm not going to list, the fact that I find them unattractive as a reason that I dislike them, because all that would do is make me look really shallow. So, pick a better reason than he's ugly in his human form to dislike him. I mean, I can see where people are coming from not liking his appearance, since he's not traditionally, not exactly traditionally attractive, even though I personally find him handsome. But, if I were you, I wouldn't list that on one of your reasons that you dislike him, 'cause it's about as weak and shallow as you can get. No offense, but it is. He's scary in his beast form, especially when he's angry. Well, I saw the movie when I was like 3 years old in the theater. In fact, it was the first movie that I ever saw in the theater, and he didn't scare me. But I suppose that I can see why he might scare some children. I mean, scariness is very much in the eye of the beholder. I mean, the Disney movie that scared me the most as a child was, actually Toy Story, with, all of the mutant toys. And, most people weren't bothered a bit by that. So, scariness is in the eye of the beholder, and I can see why some people might find him, scary when he gets angry. So, I mean, he probably isn't a character for every child, but, if your child is the type who gets scared by stuff like that, you know, don't, know your child and don't show them the movie till they're older. And I mean, if you're still scared of him as an adult, I don't know what to say except he's a frickin' cartoon character. And, you should know better than to be scared of him at this point. So, I mean, know your child, try to know what scares them and what they should watch. I can understand why he might scare some children, even though he didn't scare me. Because scariness is very much in the eye of the beholder, and, and different things frighten different children. But, parents really need to know their children and keep an eye on what they're watching and that sort of thing. And if you're an adult and you're still frightened of him, that's a whole nother story. And you need to realize that he's a cartoon character and not real and not going to hurt you. He has no personality in his human form. Well, we don't really see much of him in his human form, so we don't know exactly what his personality would be. I mean, I assume it would be pretty much the same as his beast form after he reformed. I don't really... I don't really see how his human form... How him in his human form would have much of a different personality than him in his beast form after he's reformed. So, to me, he does have a personality in his human form. We just don't really get to see him express much of it in his human form, since, I mean, he only gets, I think, 2 or 3 lines of dialogue. Belle, it's me, and, Lumiere, Cogsworth, Mrs. Potts, look at us! I mean, that's about all he says in his human form. So, to say that he has no personality in his human form is kind of a weak complaint, since we've already seen what he's like after after his reformation. We just don't see... We just don't really see him... We just don't really see him display that in his human form. And as my friend and I have mentioned before, way too many characters get labeled as having no personality. Unless you're talking about a very, 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 very minor background character with, you know, one line of dialogue or something, they pretty much all have a personality. Not a very well-developed one, maybe. A poorly written one. But they all have a personality. I mean, even if you're talking about, like, Snow White's prince or Prince Charming from the original Cinderella, they all have somewhat of a personality. And I think that we already know what his personality is in human form since we've already seen him act out his personality in beast form. We just haven't seen him do it in human form. So that's a pretty weak complaint. Anyway, moving on. He should have stayed a beast. Why? I thought the whole point of it was for him to become a human. And by that, do you mean, by that, do you mean... By he should have stayed a beast, do you mean you liked him better as Beast, so you wish he had stayed a beast, or, are you referring back to the first complaint, where he wanted Belle for a selfish reason, and, he didn't actually learn to love her, so the spell shouldn't have been broken, because I never quite got this complaint. I mean, I personally prefer his looks as a beast than as a human, speaking as a fan of his, but, the whole point of the movie was for him to become human. So, I mean, even though I do kind of wish that, that there was a way that he could have stayed a beast, even though I do kind of wish that, it would have been sad, and it wouldn't have been the happy ending that he and Belle had hoped for. I mean, I can kind of get that, but just because I personally prefer his looks as a beast, and based on what little interaction I've seen with them as humans in the first movie and in the Enchanted Christmas one, and the interaction I've seen with them, where he's a beast, I personally prefer him where he, in beast form, but that, having him stay a beast really would have been a sad ending, so even though I prefer him in beast form, I don't think he should have stayed one. And if you're referring to, like, if you're referring to he didn't learn to love Belle, so the spell shouldn't have been broken, and he should have stayed a beast, it made it pretty obvious that he learned to love her, so sorry. It made it pretty obvious by, like, the fact that he let her go to her father, and all that stuff, that he had learned to love her. So, yeah, the spell definitely should have been broken, and he should have become human. He's angry, mean, cruel, and abusive. Yeah, he did start out that way. I don't know how much I would say he was abusive. I mean, we never actually saw him being abusive to her except, yelling at her. About the only abusive thing I'd say that he did was locking her dad in the dungeon. And I think that he did that more for his own protection because he didn't want someone going out and, gossiping about their, about having found some sort of monster. And, then the whole village coming and trying to kill him. I think that he did that more for his own protection, rather than, trying to abuse, Maurice. So, I'm not saying that that was right, but I don't think that it was just to abuse him. And as far as Belle, the worst that you really see him doing to her is, yelling at her, not really physically abusing her or anything. Yeah, he is mean to her, and he's very angry. I imagine a lot of his anger comes, from the fact that he's been turned into a monster. And is angry at himself, for doing that, and is looking for someone to take it out on. I'm not trying to excuse him or anything, but, he's just a very complex character, which is why I like him so much. So, while he is angry, I'd say that his anger is mostly because, mostly anger at himself and at the situation about, being turned into a beast, and taking it out on everyone around him, and while he is mean, I would say that it's pretty much the same thing with his anger, just trying to take his anger at himself out on someone. And as far as his abusiveness, I wouldn't go so far as to say that he's an abusive character. Since, like I said, the worst thing that you see him doing is yelling at Belle, and, I think in the West Wing, throwing something across the room, and then arguably being abusive to Maurice by, throwing him in the dungeon, which I don't think was done for an abusive reason. I think it was done more for his own protection. So, I'm not trying to excuse his behavior, but I'm just trying to explain the reasoning behind it. And the main point is that he reforms. He starts off he starts off being like that, but he quickly reforms after he loses his temper at Belle, in the West Ring. Excuse me. Sorry, I stutter. I came prepared this time. After he loses his temper at Belle in the West Wing, And she goes running out in fear. You immediately see him throw his face into his hands and start crying, realizing how stupid he was, and then going out and saving her from the wolves. So, he did start out as a mean, angry, and I guess slightly abusive character, if you want to argue that. But he quickly reforms. So, to me, it's not really worth hating him, because of... To me, those reasons aren't really worth hating him, since he reforms from them. He's an ungrateful, spoiled brat. Again, he starts off being an ungrateful, spoiled brat, which is what got him turned into a beast. But he reforms. He realizes that being an ungrateful, spoiled brat is... He realizes that being an ungrateful, spoiled brat and only thinking of himself isn't the right way to live his life, and reforms. And to me, hating a character who starts off that way isn't really a good reason to hate them. Because there are a lot of characters that start off as kind of bratty characters and realize that and mature through the movie. I mean, to me, characters like the kids in Jessie that, and yeah, I know I've mentioned them a lot. To me, characters like the kids in Jessie that are constantly ungrateful, spoiled brats that only think of themselves, and that never learn how to care for other people, that never reform, that never learn that to do anything for anyone but themselves. To me, they're a lot much worse characters than Beast is. I mean, yeah, he starts off as very ungrateful and very spoiled, and especially if you watch the midquel, the Enchanted Christmas, where he is throwing a fit because he hates the gifts that his servants are giving him and that sort of thing. Yeah, he's definitely an ungrateful, spoiled brat. But the whole point is that the whole point in his character development is that he learns not to be. So, to me, you're kind of missing the point of his character, that as they say in the opening, the prince was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. That he started out that way, and uh, and learns to love, and earns someone else's love in return. He becomes a wimp after he reforms. Huh? How does he become a wimp? This complaint I never got. I mean, to me, he's... I mean, yeah, you don't see him yelling and throwing things, but, I don't really see how that, made him any less of a wimp. To me, after he reforms, he seems a lot more, awkward around Belle, not quite sure... not quite sure how to, act around her, nervous around her, which to me is understandable, since she's the first girl he's ever cared about. Probably the first girl he's ever talked to, instead of, like, unless you count, like, Mrs. Potts and Babette the Feather Duster. So, I mean, it's understandable that he would be a lot more shy and nervous, since he's now dealing with the first girl that he's ever cared about. So I don't really see how that makes him a wimp. To me, it always came across as cute. I mean, if you watch, Mulan, you can see, Shang is very tough and comfortable yelling at the guys in the army, but when he finds out that Mulan is a girl, and starts getting a crush on her, he's very awkward and shy around her. So, to me, they didn't really make him a wimp, they just made him, well, act like a guy normally would around a girl that he has a crush on. Quit losing his temper. So, I think that people need to take into consideration not only has he reformed and quit roaring and exploding and yelling, but he's also dealing with the first girl that he has ever cared about and has a crush on, and feels very awkward and timid and shy around her. That's something that I think people need to take into consideration about him when he reforms. So, I wouldn't say that he's a wimp, but, because... And, I mean, when Gaston attacks, which I will get more into in later complaints, when Gaston attacks and he doesn't fight back, I also wouldn't say that he's a wimp there, because he feels very depressed that again, the first girl that he ever loved has left him, and he really feels like he has no purpose in life now, and wishes he were dead. So he would be just as happy if Gaston would him. I know, it's sad to think about it, but like I said, he's a very complex character, which is why I love him. Because when you see Bill showing up, as soon as he sees her, he begins to fight back because he now has purpose in life. So no, he's far from a wimp when he reforms. He's just dealing with, not only having reformed, but dealing with his first crush and the first girl that he cares about. Anyway, he's a bad role model. He's not the ideal role model. I wouldn't say that he's the ideal role model like, the early Disney princesses like Cinderella and Snow White. I'd say that he's more like a normal human being that has problems with anger issues and that sort of thing. Anger issues, selfishness, and is trying to overcome them, that sort of thing. And so I wouldn't say that he's a horrible role model for people who have problems with those kind of things, because he does show that you can overcome them. And that you can overcome them if you work towards them. He's intended to be more of a real person that has some big flaws, that is working to overcome them, and to show people how they're overcome. I mean, yeah, he's not I wouldn't say he's the ideal role model like Belle is. She's more intended to be the role model in that movie, I'd say. But I also wouldn't say that he's a terrible role model, since he actually works to overcome his problems and succeeds in doing them. Now, I mean, if children are going to, decide to model themselves after his flaws, that's another story. But again, there are far worse role models, like I mentioned earlier, the kids in Jessie, the original Tinkerbell, those kind of characters. I'd say they're much worse role models than he is. And any of the Disney villains that your kids decide to role model themselves after. I mean, I'd be a lot more worried if my child decided that they were going to role model themselves after Gaston or Maleficent or something like that than after someone like Beast, who actually works to overcome his flaws. So, not the ideal role model. I'd say that Bill was more intended to be the role model in that movie, but also not the worst one. And he's probably more a role model for people who are looking to overcome problems in their lives. So I kind of get that complaint, but not entirely. He let Bill go and ruined his servant's chances of becoming human again. Excuse me, my throat's getting dry. This one I kind of do get, but, you have to remember that that would be a really tough choice. I mean, you've got... I mean, imagine yourself in his situation. You've got the first girl that you've ever loved. She's just found out that her father's dying. Then you've got, you and your servants who want to become human and have only a little time left to become human. So, what would you do? It's kind of a, danged if you do, danged if you don't situation. You know what I mean? I mean, if he... And I think that he kind of, that he kind of assumed that if he... I think he kind of assumed that if he demanded that Bill stay there, after having just seen her dying father, that she would be so angry at him that he wouldn't have much chance of even for the sake of his servants, they wouldn't have much chance of breaking the spell, because how could you love someone who kept you away from your dying father? Answer that. I mean, if he had told Bill that she had to stay there, even if it was for the sake of his servants, and not for his own selfish gain, she would have been pretty hacked at him. And she probably wouldn't have been able to love him. And not in time to break the spell. And that also would have ruined their chances of becoming human. Also, I think that having had just learned to love her, you can also look at it this way. I think having had just learned to love her, he probably cared more about her happiness more than anyone else's. So he decided to only think about her and let her go. Which, yeah, it wasn't nice for the servants, but I mean, having just learned to love her, it was kind of hard for him not to think about anyone but her. And again, you have to think about the situation, and it's pretty much a danged if you do, danged if you don't situation. You know what I mean? He didn't care that an angry mob was attacking the castle, or that his servants could be hurt or die in the process. This one I also kind of get, but you have to remember that he basically just lost the only person that he ever truly loved. The only person that he had ever truly learned to love. And he was extremely depressed and basically felt suicidal. So when you're that depressed and wish that the world would end, wish that you would die, I think that he kind of assumed that they could take care of themselves and hoped that the mob would come and get him. I'm not saying that it was right, but you have to take into consideration how depressed he was, having just lost Belle. I'm not saying that it was right, and I think that it could have been handled slightly better. I kind of get this complaint, but choosing to dislike a character just because a scene with them wasn't handled perfectly is kind of a weak reason. I mean, I probably would have had him say something like, try to defend yourselves, but, just let them come and get me, something like that. So that it didn't sound like, he didn't care about their lives or something like that, but I think the scene was trying to get across how depressed he was, and the fact that he had completely lost all. Felt like he had completely lost all purpose in life. So I do think the scene could have been handled a little bit better, but I still wouldn't choose to like it. I still wouldn't choose to dislike him just because the scene wasn't handled perfectly. That's a pretty weak reason. Anyway, moving on to our two really, really dumb complaints. He likely sexually abused Belle. Let me respond with a... Where the frick in his personality would it indicate that he sexually abused her? It is frickin' Disney, people! Where did this complaint come from? Where? Where? Hello? Okay. This has got to be one of the dumbest complaints I have ever heard. Like I said before, he never does anything physically abusive to her. The worst he does is yell and throw something across the room. And for Pete's sake, it's Disney. Sex doesn't exist in Disney. I mean, yeah, I know people reproduce in Disney, but I mean, this is up there with the complaint about Grumpy wanting to have sex with Snow White and, Minnie and Scrooge's relationship being inappropriate. and all of that garbage, Where does it hint that he probably sexually abused Belle? Where? The only Disney cartoon that I know of where they even hint at sexual content is Hunchback, and it's very, very, very briefly hinted at in that. I mean, heck, as a kid, I had no idea that's what they were hinting at. So, this is definitely one of the dumbest complaints that I've ever heard. I mean, to all my fellow Disney fans, please quit. Please quit trying to read sexual content into all Disney cartoons. It doesn't exist in that world. It doesn't. It doesn't! And moving on to one that's shockingly even dumber than the one that I just read. He's actually Chip's father. Let me respond with another. Sorry, I went a little overboard on that one. How can he be Chip's father? For starters, he, as I just mentioned, sex does not exist in the Disney universe. But as they mention, as they hint at, he was basically turned into the Beast at 11. It said that the rose would bloom until his 21st year, and then Lumiere says, 10 years we've been rusting, needing so much more than dusting, so he basically turned into the Beast at 11. And Chip is, 4 or 5, something like that. So, how the frick could he be the father of a kid that age if he's only 21? That would mean that, he was a dad before he went through puberty. That makes absolutely no logical sense. So, Disney fans, get your mind out of the gutter and stop making up these completely illogical fan theories. That's all I have to say about it. And this is the longest video I've ever done. Anyway, I think it's about time for me to wrap it up before I go even crazier. I personally love Beast. He's my favorite Disney prince and one of my favorite animated heroes. I love him because he's such a complex character. And has a lot of layers to his personality. And isn't just your standard Disney hero. The link to my friend's video will be in the comment section below, or the description box below, I'm sorry. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Bye, see you next time.